I would like to welcome everyone who's joined us today, new friends, old friends, everyone. And feel free to please unmute yourself and say salam, say hello at the beginning. Just everybody say salams.
Assalamu alaikum.
Hello.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Welcome.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah, everyone.
Assalamu
alaikum.
alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. We have been having people from over 26 states and about 7 countries. So we log in from different time zones. And we haven't had a chance to greet each other yesterday. We said salams. So from now onwards, this is our 5th series, 5th meeting, but we have 4 more to go, inshallah. May Allah accept this as our act of intentional remembrance and awareness of these blessed days and reviving our sense of answering the call to God, Labayk, and reflecting on the very critical issues of Tawheed, Shirk, and other main tenets of the faith, and journeying along with Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam and Hagar and the other prophets. We have a presenter who's joining us from overseas, so time is sensitive. We're gonna start after we renew our intentions to, inshallah, be present and open and mindful in answering the call to God to us, Labayk.
لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك.
My name is Maha Nuruddin. I'll be your discussant. And we have our resident Quran scholar who will be speaking after our 2 presenters. I will go ahead and of course, our host today is Sister Nartila. Please send her your email if you're not already on the list, just so that you can get notifications and learn about our next events. We don't sell anything. This is all purely non-commercial, non-profit, non-material, non-financial. So please do share your email with our host, Sister Nartila, or if you have comments and questions and so forth, please go ahead and share in the chat. Also feel free to unmute yourself. Our first presenter, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, is Professor Faraz Sheikh, who's joining us from overseas right now. Is your connection okay?
Yes, Maha. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Let me introduce you quickly. Faraz says he's someone who is looking to make sense of his life, a student and seeker of meaning, someone who suspects and has some reason to think that his maker is speaking to him in the Quran about the meaning of his life. This is the relevant bio. The irrelevant bio, Professor Faraz Sheikh says, is that he researches and teaches about religion and ethics and the relations between discursive practices and subjectivity. He has a master's and a PhD in religious studies from Indiana University in Bloomington. And he teaches at the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. Professor Faraz Sheikh's topic today will be a quick review, pardon me. The topic is a quick overview of pivotal points and concepts in the transformative journey charted in Surah As-Safat verses 99 till 111. He will also address a question that he was asked, I think, during the second day of our webinar. Welcome, Professor Faraz Sheikh. If you can turn on your camera.
Yes. Hello, I'm the Dark Knight speaking. My background is dark because people are asleep around me. So pardon my circumstance. I will try to take as little of your time as possible. I really, my primary intention was to respond to the question that that arose during Isra's presentation. And I think she mentioned something that we had discussed, and then it was a question was raised, and I thank you, Andrea. The question was, if I understand it correctly, but do correct me if I don't understand it correctly, was the idea that there is no real loss, or rather, the question is, the question was that related to the claim that we don't need to think about developing some sort of a capacity to bear more and more hardship and more pain without complaining and without responding, and somehow that is what is required of me, or that is what is piety is, or that is what gratitude to God or surrender to God would be, that I would be able to take a lot. And so the claim was that that is not the case, but rather the the goal is to shift one's perspective in a way that which was something that one was going to bear as a burden is no longer a burden. And so I think that was the claim, and the question in response, I think, was, and I'm not clear on that, but so help me, Maha, if you may. The question was that how could someone say that there is no burden or loss for us to bear when there is so much loss and injustice that people bear, colonialism, racism, patriarchy, and whatever. I'm guessing those were examples of how people actually do suffer loss and suffer from injustice. So how could I say that there isn't, that there could be a perspective in which there would be no loss? Am I understanding the question correctly, or would you add something to that?
That's the way at least I understood it for us, like when it was posed. So I think you got it.
Let me repeat the question quickly, if you like.
Sure.
I found it. Could you explain what you said about knowing God is not about expanding our endurance of pain or suffering, but rather to create a paradigm shift where our perception is that pain itself is not painful. How can you explain that regarding big calamities like slavery, rape, violence, war, personal crises, substance abuse of parents, etc.?
Right, right. So I guess I will quickly say two things. I think what said, or what I'm saying, I think most people here would already say that. So it's not. I don't think I'm making anything new in the claim that I make. And so I think even the questioner would agree that we're not really expected to, build the capacity to bear more pain, but rather to change the perspective. So I'm going to assume that we all share that as a sort of baseline. But the question I also want to say, the second thing, is an excellent one. And I'm not saying that because I know the questioner, I don't, and not because I want to, them to be pleased with me. Thankfully, I'm beyond that stage in my life where I want. But I think genuinely it's a good question because the verses that I've shared with you, and I don't have them in front of me like to share with you on the screen, but hopefully you can look them up in As-Safat, Surah 37, verse 99, I think is the first where Abraham begins his journey in these verses of looking for guidance. And so the question to me comes from that place, and it's important for me, if we want to end up where Abraham ends up, I have to start where Abraham starts. I can't expect to end up where Abraham does if I am not ready to start where he begins. So the question is an excellent one because it is starting with a perfectly human response to human reality. And now when I say perfectly human response, I don't mean in human that it is a guided response. It is a response that is human because it is looking for guidance, the question. So it's a guidance seeking response.
Faraz, can you please raise your voice? There is a request to kindly, and we apologize because I know you have family sleeping on the other side of the Atlantic right now, but we still need to hear you. Thank you.
Right. Okay. I might have to give a gift to my mother-in-law tomorrow because of waking her up. But so I think this is as loud as I can possibly get without actually waking everyone up. So if someone can't hear me and they really want to, although I don't think I'm going to say anything very useful, but if they can maybe hear the recording through someone else later on, my apologies that this is as loud as I can get. So and so the question is a good one, and so let me just quickly say that when you look at the verses in Abraham's journey, we see that there isn't in the journey a capacity building. Abraham does not build some sort of a some sort of a character, capacity to bear the loss that that we might assume that he's asked to bear. What does happen is quite quick and quite sudden, and again, I can't go into what is Ismail, or at least I can't justify it here. But what I will say is that to me, Ismail is all the the things that are there to serve me, but which I see so second nature to me that I don't see them carrying any good news. They, when they are given to me, they are supposed to be given as a good news because they're good news because they are bearing a good news. but I don't see it like Abraham doesn't see it that way. Abraham sees it, and I, of course, I read myself in Abraham, and so I ask myself, you know, when Abraham thinks he's asked to slaughter something that is serving him, what would that mean to me? Do I, in my mindless sleep-like, dream-like state, think that I'm asked to suffer a loss? And what is to me very transformative in the, you know, the pivotal point in the verse is when Ishmael speaks. And because to me, the speech that is put in Ishmael's mouth is the speech of creation that the Quran is asking me to hear. That is, if you may, the revelatory part of this this segment for me is in terms of meaning. So when Ishmael speaks, he says two things. Yes, very good. So from Ibrahim's journey, you know, we can tell, we can trace back. So he says he's looking for guidance. And then the story goes into that he asks for his Rabb to love for him minas salihin. So there's a longer story, or longer discussion is needed. And I'm going to just say that, yes, you can say it's a son he's asking for, but he actually doesn't ask for a son, and neither is he given a son. He's actually given good news. وَبَشَّرْنَا, and so he's asking for someone among the righteous. And for me, one way to understand it is to, when things that are not right in my world, when I want them to be right, when I want them to be whole, when I want them to make sense, that is what Abraham's question is. You know, he wants righteousness, a righteous he wants from among the righteous. And when I understand it, I want to be able to see around me everything is wonderful and perfect. That's what, and it's nothing that is hurtful and injurious and meaningless as far as I'm concerned. And to me, so righteousness is to be, you know, things to be right between me and the world. How can I reconcile with the world that I find myself in with my reality? So, but in any case, you know, without saying more, this is Ishmael's speech. And immediately the following verse after Ishmael speaks, it says, they surrendered or submitted. So again, because of lack of time, I just wanted to say that there is a shift in perspective as far as I can understand as Abraham, where what Abraham has seen as a loss or a possible loss in his dreamlike state, the being that, what the thing that he thinks he's going to lose or consume or sacrifice, whatever you want to call it. Ishmael says, that thing speaks to Ibrahim and says, and this is the key to me, af'al, now somebody help me with the Arabic. Wait, let me go to the thing.
يا أبتي.
There's a lot of echo.
It was me, sorry. يا أبتي افعل ما تؤمر.
Thank you very much. Yes. Ya abati if'al ma tu'mir. Okay, so this means do what you are commanded or instructed to do. Now, I don't have time to me, this is the transformation of my understanding of creation. And I will very quickly jump to a very, extreme example. I have a sense of indignation when I see injustice. This sense of indignation I use against injustice. And when I do so, I burden myself with rage against injustice. And as I use my indignation, this sense of justice, I use it up as if. And as I'm using it, I am consuming it as if, as if this fuel that I'm burning. And I use that because we say we get burnt out or things like that. So this is my dreamlike delusional understanding of indignation, to which indignation responds and says, so in my interpretation now, you can say indignation is a created being that is righteous, that's the correct pair of injustice. Injustice is paired with indignation. So it is a righteous thing because it makes it whole. Now, when indignation is mine, then I am indignant and I am enraged. Ishmael, or indignation, says to me, this indignation is a command from you, of your Lord. It is something willed that is a command of your maker. And when you are indignant, so you are following the command of your maker. Who is the maker who gives the command of indignation in response to injustice? The just one. The command of indignation in response to injustice can only come from a just one, a compassionate one. So when I am anti-racist and when I am anti-slavery and when I am anti-colonial, I can be anti-colonial in the name of some ideology, some human construct, and I can become a foot soldier of that ideology. Or the alternative description of the same behavior, same attitude, is presented as af'al, what you are commanded. You are doing it. This is, to me, the revelatory or the alternative the Quran is presenting to me. The Ishmael that you have made second nature, that's why it says balagha, until he grew up to be, things that are given to us, we grow up with them. They're second nature to us. They become part of me, my struggles, it's just who I am. So the Quran comes and says, look, instead of, you see this, you have a question about this, why are there things in the world about which you are feeling indignant and feeling, what are you going to make of this reality? You should have a question, as the questioner has the question. And the answer is that this feeling of indignation does not run away. It's very patient. The patience of Ismail to me is the very unflinching, presence of this feeling. It just is there, and it waits for me to make a choice about it. It's there. It says, "I'm here. What are you going to do now? What choice are you going to make?" And Abraham, when he hears Ishmael say, "You are going to do what you are commanded," this is not your delusional sort of idea that this is something that you need to, as if, use up and consume and sacrifice. So this, your urge to act justly, to respond with rage and indignation, is a command of your Lord. So when Abraham realizes and says, I'm going to entrust this indignation to my Lord, now the Lord guides me to him and reveals that he is a just one. He reveals it in me. He is the just one. It is his command that is the indignation. That's why the Quran describes the soul as the amr of God. Human soul is described as a command. Anyway, so this is the change of perspective with Abraham experiences. There is no longer a sacrifice. There is no longer a loss. There is no longer this sense that there is this wrong to which I must develop some, robust capacity to respond with more and more courage and patience. It is a command of this. The more I need to realize my true reality, the more I realize that this injustice is not mine. I'm not free to not be indignant. I'm free, but I can only do so at the expense of subverting my reality that I felt. Maybe I fear harm, maybe I fear other things, so I don't speak up, or I justify not being indignant, or I justify slavery because of economic. If you were a Southerner in the 1800s, you would have said, by God's mercy and God's provision is increased when I employ slaves. So you can make all kinds of narratives and stories to justify anything, but the Quran stands there and claims something that is wrong. It is a command of your God. The righteous command is from God. Ishmael, the righteous command, is from God, which responds to an injustice with indignation. And I therefore learn that in this world, I am here to hear the news that in my soul, who my Lord is, because of what he's doing in me. He is acting in me with a command. So my responses to things are his commands. This is a revolutionary, or if you want to say it's a completely different perspective of what I am doing when I'm responding to injustice, what meaning I will give to it, how I will describe it. And should I describe it with the realization that there is absolutely perfect justice that nothing can escape, it brings me a safety and excellence and wholesomeness and security and salam that the verses end up with. So if I'm going to go through Abraham's journey, I need to find out, ask myself, who is my Ishmael, my need for righteousness? My need for righteousness is Ishmael. And what completes that, what makes it available, or what makes me waste it away or think that I need to slaughter it away and lose it and just consume it and not get any fruit out of it. That is my delusion. And can I see that need for righteousness as a command of my Maker in me, of my Lord in me, which gives me news of who this Lord is? And this news, when I hear, I am empowered to act indignantly for the sake of justice. But with this action for the sake of justice is nothing but the fulfillment of the command of my Lord. And so I will just stop there, but thank you for your time and attention, everyone.
Thank you, Professor Faraz Sheikh. There are a few private questions, and other people could also, there are a couple of comments. Other people could also unmute themselves and ask Faraz directly. But one of the questions is, what do you mean by command, God's command? Whose interpretation? In other words, how do you interpret what a command is or is not? Shall I tell you all the questions at once?
Sure. Yeah, maybe just you can read out the questions. Maybe.
Okay, the second one is, you said I'm not free not to feel indignant. So the question is, but you're free to kill? And so let's start with these two.
So yeah, freedom is an interesting. When I meant I'm not free to, I'm free to do everything, totally free. I'm free to kill. I'm free to not feel indignant. I'm free. What I meant was each individual has to make that choice to say at the expense of what are they. For as far as I am concerned, I understand that I cannot kill without feeling it is wrong, unless it would be something that I could justify. So unjust killing is a wrong to me, and I'm free to make excuses for it. And those who do make excuses for it, they make excuses for it. But my indignation about their excuses and my feeling that might being troubled by people's being murderers and justifying their murders, and my being troubled about it is what is the question. Who is troubled? Whose action is that? And I typically in my delusion think this is me, this is who I am. I don't like injustice. And the Quran says, no, this not liking justice is the fulfillment of a command of your Lord. This is the will of your Lord that you experience as a troubled consciousness about injustice. This is the righteous servant of God, Ishmael, bearing news to you that your Lord is just. Your Lord is compassionate. And he knows and he sees. That's why he makes you feel this. If he didn't know, he wouldn't make you feel injustice. You wouldn't be able to feel injustice. It would be something outside his knowledge. So the Quran asks me to, like Abraham, and I have a choice here. I can listen, like Ishmael says to Abraham, when he says to Abraham, do what you are commanded. I am free to say, no, I'm not going to do what I'm commanded. I'm going to do what I feel like doing. This is me. I am going to be against justice, against injustice. This is my choice.
But for us, so that we can be clear, what you just said, you explained the command to be feeling troubled at something unjust. So how come it turns out that what I feel is not the command, as though there is a conflict? You've just said that there was no conflict, that the command of feeling indignant or troubled or disturbed is the command itself. So can you clarify?
Yeah. What you said, that when I am, what makes me troubled? Who is troubled? Whose will it is that injustice is to be disliked, to be eliminated, to be fixed, to be made right? That injustice is a wrong to be made right. Whose will is it? Whose and by whose act are you able to feel that? Who makes you feel that? What makes you feel that? And the answer is your Lord, who is who must be a just one, so that he makes you feel indignant about injustice. You are simply witnessing his will in yourself, his command that, for example, let there be justice. If you want to put it in this way, let there be justice is the command. It manifests in you as indignation against injustice.
Yeah, then where is the conflict then? If you don't follow ahead with something that feels unjust, then where is the conflict?
Conflict? Conflict between what two things?
You just said, while answering the question, that I could either listen to the command of God, or I could say, no, I'm going to do what I feel like doing, which is not following injustice. And
no.
I see that it appears that what you're saying is the command itself is feeling troubled and staying with feeling troubled, that one should not commit an unjust act. Is this correct?
Correct, yeah. But I can ignore I have a free will, so I can, this is when somebody is following taking guidance from the Quran. But because the difference is in whose name I will feel that indignation. That is the point. If I do it in my name, then I am consuming these feelings. I'm burdened with these feelings of indignation, and I must do something, and I try to do something. But the Quran's guidance is saying these are the righteous things that you find in yourself are actually the command, what you are commanded. So when you act righteously, when you want to act righteously, when you need righteousness, you are experiencing your Lord who loves righteousness, who is the just, the compassionate. And so do it in that way. Don't do it by way of sacrificing yourself, using up some of your sense of justice, and, don't try to use it as if it is your property and you're expending it, because then it will be like sacrifice. You will feel like you are making these sacrifices for what? For nothing. Why did somebody put you in a world and burden you with these awareness of injustice and the need to find justice, and then left you to do it now, create just world? So this is one vision of reality that human beings have without listening to guidance. Guidance comes and says, look, you are here to know that I am your Lord, who is aware of what you see as lack. I make you aware of it so that you can be aware of me, the just, compassionate one. And you can be sure that I am the just one, and I can be sure that I'm free, because I have left people to do unjust things like killing. So human beings have been left free, but that's why guidance makes sense, that I can either choose to follow it or not. Now, could you remind me the first question you asked? I started with the second one. The first one was, what is a command, you said? What is a command? Yeah. What oh, sorry, I can't hear you, Maha. I think you're mute.
Sorry. Yes, the first question was, what do you mean by command? And the second one was, you're free not to feel indignant, but are you free to kill? I think that was based on the idea of sacrifice. So Faraz, can you please clarify these last 2 points, and then other friends, if you have additional questions, this is the time, because we need to move on to our second presenter. So,
Yeah.
Kindly clarify what are the most important messages? If you want to clarify the issue of command versus what we feel, or your gist of that paradigm shift that you wanted to share.
Yeah, I think I would say is that when you feel the need for righteousness, it could be justice, it could be equality, it could be life, wanting life for some, or health, anything when you want to make whole, when you have a feeling that you want to make something right, make something whole, realize that that feeling is the will and the command of the one who gave you that sense. So try to then reflect and see who is the one who wills that there be sadness at death, that there be a need for health in the face of sickness, that there be indignation in the face of injustice. What kind of a being wills this? And when you reflect on it and try to see such a Lord, and try to see if you find peace in realizing that the one who is making you aware of this need, giving you this need for righteousness, is perfectly aware and perfectly just and perfectly the owner of full and perfect righteousness and wholeness. And find peace in that as you act to counter injustice, as you act for, don't take on the burdens of these indignations on your own self, so that you feel like you have to sacrifice of yourself to achieve these goals, but rather to see that these goals are or will be achieved, are achieved already in the will of God, and He manifests to you so that you can know it, so you can find the peace that He is already. So it's just a matter of perspective and reflecting on your indignations as signs which are speaking to me about actions that my Lord is doing in me or on me, if you may. And so to see my own inner self as the canvas where the Lord is, um, uh, actively sending me these messages and news bearers. These are news bearers. So anyway, that was, I think, my basic point.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Dr. Yamina Boganaya.
Thank you, Faraz. I felt the need maybe to clarify a point. Although it is true that we do receive the divine command and the divine will in ourselves, otherwise how are we going to know God and act on His will? In the beginning, it can be confusing, and that's what the question is bringing out, because I could have a rightful indignation and a non-rightful indignation. So in the beginning, it's very confusing, and rightly so, because it is the wholesome, al-qalb al-salim, al-fitra al-salima, the non-corrupted nature of human being that will always be in alignment with the divine command, with the divine will. Unfortunately, because we have corrupted our perception with many our values, I could have indignation at something that will lead to injustice, actually. So that is why, because I cannot be sure that my fitra is not corrupted, actually, we are going to follow the teaching of the Quran to purify the self and unlearn, and so that the fitra, our nature is wholesome again. Our heart is truly following the divine will's GPS. Because in the beginning, we all have some corruption, then we feel the need for divine guidance. And that's why, in this sense, the Quran becomes our criterion, al-Furqan, what shows us what's good and what's wrong, and what's good and what's bad. And so, for instance, when it comes to injustice, it says directly, like, injustice is, God does not love injustice, and he made you not love it. So when I find in myself indignation against injustice, then I can ask, but now I cannot only take my own feelings, and whether indignation or something else, as the criteria. I have to work in parallel with divine guidance in the Quran. That is why it is so important to have it. Then from the divine guidance in the Quran, I am taught to question. So now I may have no indignation, there is injustice, clear injustice, let's say, for the sake of example, no indignation, then there is something to be done. I can have indignation, but I feel that it is my indignation. I don't question it. And now I use it against God himself. How could you create something like this? And there is the teaching of the Quran which tell me, is it yours? Is that indignation towards injustice truly yours? Ask, where did you find it? The injustice occurs, and suddenly I find in myself indignation. I didn't buy it, I didn't create it. It is not mine, it is given to me, it is created into me. I find it. When I find it in me, if it is not mine, whose is it? When I find the maker, the owner, then that's where Faraz was saying, I find the one who makes me dislike injustice and like justice and seek justice. And so I know him as the just. Now I can know him as the just. And so that indignation within me becomes a messenger, an ayah, a sign, a messenger making known my maker, my sustainer to me. Just as he makes me breathe here and now, I breathe through divine command, through his beinities, his will, that's what it means, the manifestation of his will. I find my indignation towards injustice in me by divine command when I do the work and question and find out that it's not mine. When I am in ghafla, in mindlessness, in heedlessness, I take it for granted falsely that it is mine. And so how come I don't like injustice? How come you, God, as if God is separate from me, as if God has nothing to do with that indignation. I use indignation against him to judge him. And then I can never resolve the situation because I'm starting from a false premise. I'm saying the indignation is mine. I wanted to make that clarification.
Dr. Yamina, as we wait for you to turn on your camera, thank you for the clarification. However, this does not seem to be what Prophet Ibrahim, peace be upon him, did. He was sharpening his knife. So how can we pause and sharpen our knife at the same time? At something that is clearly, at least in the Quran later, and the Quran was revealed later, but it says do not kill, yet here is a prophet who dreams of killing and goes ahead and sharpens his knife and begins to kill his own son. So where is your voice is muted?
Okay, there is no sharpening of the knife in the Quran, by the way. But if we are going to look at the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, then I wouldn't start from the indignation. That was a separate note.
Okay.
Yeah. So
thank you for clarifying. But he did prepare his son. Was it so? So the sharpening of the knife comes from biblical.
Yes.
Okay, what about preparing Ismail alayhi salam?
In the Quran, we are told that after Ibrahim alayhi salam leaves his people who worshipped idols, and he says, "Inni dhahibun ila Rabbi sayahdin." I am going to my Rabb, my Lord. He's sure to guide me. And then we are told, he asks for someone who is righteous. He's given the good news that he has a gentle and forbearing son. And then we are told when the son is old enough to go out with his father, Ibrahim alayhi salam says, "Oh, my son, I have seen in my dream that I see myself sacrificing you. What do you think?" And the son says, "Oh, father," this is what Faraz shared, "Oh, father, ya abati, if'al ma tu'mar. Do as you are commanded, and God willing, you will find me steadfast." And then when they both surrendered, and he had laid his son down on the side of his face, we called out to him, "You have been true to the vision. قد صدقت الرؤيا. إن كذلك نجزي المحسنين." This is how we reward those who do good, but actually it's not doing good, because ihsan is it's more than just doing good. Whatever.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Yamina.
I can go through that, but if I go through what Faraz said in the beginning, my question, when Faraz was speaking, what came to my mind, rather than saying Faraz said that, it's different. So when Faraz was asking and saying that Ibrahim alayhi salam, we are not learning from him to be very strong and bear with pain and things like that, I was thinking, so what's the point in pointing this? Okay, so I understood that Ibrahim alayhi salam doesn't force himself to follow what he thinks is the divine will, because he was never asked to kill anyone. It was a dream. He interpreted the dream that way, literally. The dream was not fulfilled. It means through the narration of the story, we understand that was not supposed to happen. And that's, I don't know if these questions are coming from people who followed us the three days. We particularly emphasized this story, and I particularly feel that the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, the sacrifice with the sun is to teach us to the need for destroying the idols inside, because Ibrahim alayhi salam was already surrendered, has already destroyed the idols in the outer world. But now through his story, he is taught, and with him we are also taught, that there is something else that is a shortcut, which is the love that we have for people, for things, that we need to question. That will be the new paradigm shift. And through that, when we sever, when we cut the direct horizontal love between us and the world and things in the world, then we start loving, and we establish the connection with the true owner through our Rabb. Then we start loving everything in his name, from him, as a gift from him, and everything will take us back to him. So that's, I understand, the paradigm shift that we need to cultivate now. So Ibrahim alayhi salam didn't force himself, because we see that there is clear sabr, forbearance, trust. There is no drama in his response. But I take that conclusion and I apply it to myself, who's never been through his journey of destroying the idol, of getting rid of shirk, of knowing who my sustainer is. So I am in total darkness, in total ghafla, in total mindlessness. And I take the story, apply it to myself, and I find in myself, this is unbearable. In order to do this, this guy must have really forced himself. This is really, really hard. And then when people say, follow the example of the prophet, I say, they are prophets. They can bear with it. I can't bear. And I'm missing the whole thing. The prophet is a human being. They don't have, that's what I understand Faraz is sharing with us. They are not superhuman. That trust that they can show comes in, is given to us, is gifted to everyone who goes through the same cultivation, to the same awareness. And we give a very tiny example of the wound that is very painful and don't want anyone to touch it. Yet, even if it's painful, I let the doctor clean it and do all kinds of things with this, because I trust that after this, it's going to get better. So our perception of what's going on, how we perceive it, the purpose and meaning of what's going on changes how we perceive things, changes how we respond to them. If we are not aware of this point and we don't want to change anything, we don't want to follow the guidance of the Quran, the guidance of the prophets, we just take the story, apply it to my understanding right now, and it feels off totally. And then I say, oh, this guy must be really a superhero. He has a huge patience, a huge forbearance. I don't have that. And that's why people say, yes, but they are prophets. But they are prophets because they followed something. We all have been created with the same potential. So even if we're not going to be prophets, we can get close to the prophets.
And you pause here because this is very important. This is a critical point. They are prophets because they followed some prior steps of getting to know who their Lord is, who God is.
Exactly.
And we are all born with the same potential. It is not they were superhuman, which made them able to endure. And this was, I think, Faraz's initial point, the endurance. It's not about the endurance, but it is about the connection to God. Yes. Can someone please, and we have to come back to clarify and emphasize this point again, Dr. Yamina, because it's really core. Because we do hear a lot, oh, I'm not a prophet. So prophet so and so did this because he's a prophet, but I'm not a prophet. I'm just a human being. So there is a wrong perception there as well.
We are
Before
told explicitly in the Quran, the prophets are human beings like you. This is repeated. They are not angels. They are human. If you were angels, we would send you angels. You are human beings. We send you teachers and guides as human beings who make mistakes, who eat, who drink, who have pains and grief and sadness, just like everyone else. However, Ibrahim alayhi salam, before the story of the sacrifice, we told the story of his seeking his Rabb. So we need to start, if we can start here, but then we realize instead of saying, oh, he is a prophet and just, okay, I can't do this, this is just too much, I can just go back and that too much, that overwhelming is telling me that I need to do something about it because this is supposed to be guidance to me and I can't apply it. What's going on here? So I need to ask the right question and go back to the beginning, meaning be patient and listen to the teaching from the beginning. He went from the beginning, asked question, what are these idols? Why are we worshiping things that can't help us? Are we doing this? Are we asking, why are we worshiping money? Why are we worshiping status? Why are we worshiping beauty and appearance? Are we doing this? Or are we just saying, we found our forefathers doing so? He found his people worshiping idols and he said, why are we worshiping them? So we need to start from the very beginning and follow the guidance and apply it. And you will be very, very surprised. Things will start unfolding, will start making sense. How we perceive the world will transform, how we perceive ourselves, our purpose in life will totally change. Everything will be totally different.
Thank you, Dr. Yamina, and thank you. Just a second, Dr. Sausan. We want to thank Professor Faraz Sheikh. Sarah, can you please, Sarah or Sister Nertila, can you please go through the chat because we want to cover the comments in the chat. Can someone please read through the chat? And then we go to Dr. Sausan after that.
Assalamu alaikum. There was one point I think that Sarah wanted to emphasize from Dr. Faraz Sheikh's talk, and that was you can't expect, so somebody cannot expect to end up where Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam ended up unless one is willing to start where he started. On the journey of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam toward, as an example of a perfect human response to reality, as I recall. And as some clarification also, Sister Amina, I think, had something as well. Sometimes we're asked to give up what we love in order to experience a greater love. Something I think that Debbie was mentioning in another session. That's it so far, I think. Maha, I can't,
There was an exchange between Sarah and Faraz. So,
trying to explain I think Dr. Faraz said that even our soul is from the Amr, from the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that was the clarification, I think.
Okay, thank you so much, Sister Nertila. Dr. Sausan, and then there's another comment. Dr. Sausan first, and then we're going to read the comment from the chat box.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and thank you so much for another wonderful session. Maha, Faraz, Yamina, and everybody who participated. I mean, I'll have to say every day it just gets deeper, more problematic, and more exciting. I just love that environment. I want to add really 4 main comments in following up with both what Faraz and Yamina were saying. And please forgive me if I misunderstood anything. The first thing that comes to my mind is the notion of perception. And this is such a large topic, but I'm just going to share 2 little anecdotes as to how we perceive things to be, and it may or may not be true, and it may not be also accurate to the instructions given. So one day, a patient goes to a doctor. He complains of a certain pain, and the doctor prescribes a medication, and he asks him to take certain pills at certain times. A week or 2 passes by, the patient comes again, and the doctor asks, "How are you feeling?" He says, "I'm still in so much pain." He said, "How come? I mean, those bills, I mean, regardless whether we're saying with the help of God or not, should have helped you." He said, "They in fact cause me now more pain in my ears." He said, "How come?" The doctor, then the patient says, "You told me to take it morning and evening, and I've been taking the pill and putting it in my ear because that's where the pain is." So he's been squeezing the pills in the ear. And of course, now we ended up with another issue. So that his understanding of the instructions ended up in a very different circumstance than started. So that's the first parable. The second one is what we all know as placebo effects. And we play a lot with that. If we are parents with kids, you take them to the doctor. What do you say before the shot? "It's going to hurt, but not too much. And don't worry, it's just a pinch and it's going to be all right." And even though we know for sure that it will hurt more than that. But once that perception is in the mind, suddenly the pain is different. And the kid, even if they show the pain, they tell you, "Yeah, you're right. It was just a quick thing. Oh my." Yeah. And again, it may not work with everyone, but generally speaking. And of course, scientists played on that a lot. And we have so many scientific experiments, and I'm sure here we have lots of medical people on board who will tell you of experiments done where people were given a medication and they were told, "You're going to do a surgery. The pain is 10 out of 10 level." Another group was told the pain is 5 out of 10 level. And they noticed that the patients who were told it's 5 out of 10, they really went out and they said it wasn't as painful. In fact, both went through the same pain, the same procedure, the same, etc. So then when we come back and we say placebo effects, just that idea of perception. We go through situations in life, perceptions, and again, as we said, we think of prophets or their stories as the superhero stories. The pain is unbelievable. And we borrow out of context, vignettes, and we start applying it to our lives and our own stories, and we end up in different situations. So that's the first thing. I'm just going to leave it broadly as such. I love the idea, number 2, of the paradigm shift. And I really love that perception. Again, I'm going to use that word because it is a change of way to see and perceive something, regardless of what senses, by the way, we're saying. We know beyond the 5 senses, we also have other senses that we use in our life. Maybe my disagreement, and it could be just my own, I'm sorry.
It's a matter of awareness. That's why all the senses are involved.
Yeah, exactly, all of them. And so I may just have my own look into the note whether is Quran there to help us, endure loss versus have a shift of what loss is. Maybe my way of looking at it would be more of like seeing the circles, like when you throw a rock in a water and it gives you bubbles. And I wouldn't mind including a circle that says, okay, endure loss, and then a second one that says, okay, let's work on defining loss, and then a bigger one that says, was it really loss or was it really something else, and etc. So it's circles within circles. To me, makes me maybe give myself an idea that it's a process of understanding, as opposed to, no, don't think it's Quran is going to help you in your loss. In fact, it wants you to total shift in there. I wouldn't mind having a circle within circle and a process of seeing things. And it's all right to even think that it helps me endure. Because if we see, in fact, when we go sometimes through some grief, and regardless what it is, sometimes music is prescribed. And, you know, for some people, it works magic. For some people, just listening to the Quran, in fact, even if I don't understand a single word of it, makes some people think they are enduring a hard feeling. Call it loss, call it something else, that I will put in another circle and start working on that explanation.
So Sen, aren't these all levels of ihsan, levels of awareness? So when we are explaining, we go with the higher that we're aiming for.
I agree.
Because when in the beginning, when I learned that there is meaning in what's happening, so it's not meaningless, that is soothing. But if I don't have certainty that it is meaningful, and I am not experiencing the meaning, so there is still, I am still more towards the pain, but more patient and more accepting. However, if I stay there forever, it's
not going to help.
And unless I am not honest, I will just say, let's keep be patient, and inshallah in akhirah, it means if there is if there is akhirah, because when I start having some sort of certainty, however little it is, I will have certainty of akhirah. I will start experiencing the meaning of that pain. So I will be, the more I am invested in the meaning, the more the pain will be, even if it's there, it is secondary. It's not in the fore of my interest. That's not what I talk about. I'm not complaining about it. And just that shift is going to shift, because science says now, they are saying that 80% of our pain is imaginary, because we focus on
perception.
Yeah,
let's
I agree, but I guess my point is, I don't need to say either this or that. I wouldn't mind starting somewhere and slowly going to that, because again, we come from different things. So that's what I wanted to say as a last point. Sorry, Maha, so I don't take more of the time. When we all talk with each other, it's like the parable of musical notes. So I recall once we invited an Arabic musician to play the oud and the qanun, the lute and the qanun. It's a musical instrument that looks like the harp, kind of, you know, more or less. When he wanted to explain to us the different notes, he asked them, do you play instruments? Yes, we do. So, okay, in comparison to the piano notes, where we have main notes, he started explaining the concept of half notes. Then in Arabic music, those half notes, we have also quarter notes. And in the qanun, there will be also another division of those notes.
Yes.
Exactly. And so, comparison to that with exactly what we're saying, that whether at the level of vocabulary or the level of understanding. Now, when that person played to us those quarter notes, even the musical ones in the classroom could not hear it. They first were not aware, just like Yamina said last time.
We
about
cannot
the
hear what we don't know.
Exactly.
We
so
don't even see sometimes what we don't know.
So that's one thing. We need to be aware that there are, just like Yamina used the word dimensions, those notes, whatever you want to use as a parable, there are layers. So when we use a word like tawheed or surrender or command, we may be hearing it at the note or the level of a half note or a quarter or less. And that's why when we are corresponding to each other, we may not all be corresponding at the same level. And I think that's maybe what makes those sessions, thank you, Maha, very interesting, because they open up a level, as Yamina is trying to say, Faraz, on all the speakers, that there are other dimensions, other notes we need to be aware of, layers that lead to a much more refined way of connecting, etc. But I need to be aware of them. I need to start training myself to listen to them. I tell you, that musician played it so many times. He compared the half to the quarter to the less, and we couldn't see the difference. We said they're all the same. Because it's going to take us time before we say that. I'm going to stop at this just to tell you how it's not as simple, but it's a fun journey, inshallah, towards as-sirat al-mustaqim.
Thank you, Dr. Sausan, for this metaphor of notes. Dr. Yamina, we will have to move on for now, so kindly don't forget your point. We have a lot going on with the chat. We really need to cover the chat because people are getting frustrated that their questions and comments are not being shared. And I've received a few also. With your permission, we will get to this. There is a very important question that I will get to at the end of this session, not ignoring your private questions. It's just a question. It's just an issue of time management. That's all. So for now, let me thank our speaker, Professor Faraz Sheikh. Jazakallah khair. Thank you for your valuable presentation. And thank you everyone who sent comments and questions. And now we will go to our second presenter. I'm delighted to introduce my friend, Dr. Mujahida Baram. Her topic is going to be the significance of identifying idolatry. Mujahida, are you on? Yes. Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Dr. Mujahida is a mother and physician with local and global interests, including medical and humanitarian relief and reviving prophetic practices. Currently, she is residing in Chicago. So Mujahida, you are among a few other physicians here as well. Welcome, and the floor is yours. The significance of identifying idolatry. And please hold on, everyone. Keep on sending your questions. We'll take them. It's just for now, we will listen to Mujahida.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I think a lot of what I wanted to touch upon today has been discussed repeatedly and just earlier as well. So I think this would be a nice tie into what was discussed before. But idolatry is something that I've discovered is not just unique in Islamic practice, but there is idolatry, or the identification of idolatry is rather not unique. It can transcend across many other practices or religions, and not even have an essential religious connotation to it. But a lot of us identify idolatry, of course, as the explicit term of idolatry, statues, etc. And what I wanted to touch more upon and actually discuss more is the subtle idolatry that many of us may have fallen into and may not be aware. And I think that it deserves to, some attention. So when you look up the definition of idolatry, there can be many meanings to it. There can be the actual worship of idols, but then there's also the extreme love or reverence that is tied to someone or something. You idolize something or someone, essentially giving devotion, extreme devotion, love, attention. And so why is that particularly dangerous? or what is the significance of this type of idolatry? And so my understanding of it is that when we start to idolize something or someone by giving them attention, extreme amounts of attention, love, admiration, devotion, etc., in my mind, we are essentially violating God's divinity, or we're diluting the understanding God. And I've come to realize that idolatry has been transformed. Before, in the earlier centuries, many people were worshiping, idols, statues, temples, monuments, etc. Now the shift in modern times has become more sophisticated, or seductive rather, in the terms of what it is you're idolizing. It's kind of transformed from a literal to a metaphorical manifestation. And I think, even Iblis was not bold enough, or was smart enough not to even commit idolatry. I mean, Iblis knew enough not to associate other gods with Allah, but has been partaking and playing an active role in deceiving people into idolatry. And then, idolatry, many of us know, can come into different shapes and forms. In modern times, like I said, it can be something seductive or sophisticated, giving extreme devotion and admiration to, for instance, academic pursuits, to nationalism, to even to the point of idolizing relationships, family, children, certain causes. And so also of an extreme form of idolatry that we face in modern times is this power struggle. So even historically in the Quran, when you think about the idols that Sayyidina Ibrahim destroyed, Sayyidina Ibrahim's father was upset, not only because it was sort of a challenge, but because this was a form of wealth. So idols in the past were used as, as a status of power and wealth. They would manipulate and exploit the weak and the poor. And so it was used as capital. And so we see that in modern exploitation of corporations and such. So idolatry is ubiquitous, and it has many, many forms. And I know that many of us are aware of it, but why is it important for us to identify, and why is it important? It's because, and I will refer to a particular ayah that I believe sums up why it's important, and that's from Surah Al-Zumar, ayah raqam 65. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ولقد أوحي إليك وإلى الذين من قبلك لئن أشركت ليحبطن عملك ولتكونن من الخاسرين. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and it was already revealed to you and to those before you that if you should associate anything with Allah, your work would surely become worthless, and you would surely become among the losers. So it essentially nullifies everything done before. And how to combat that, or how to not only identify it, but how do you overcome it? Again, it goes back to this level of awareness, being aware of your surroundings, connecting, relearning, as was stated before, becoming conscious, and that comes at different levels and layers. And so this is where my discussion, I guess this is why I wanted this to be more of a discussion rather than me talking about it, is that I would like to hear from the group, what are some of the things that you feel that as a community or as our group we can do in order to identify and to overcome these types of idolatry worship?
That's a very important question. And we started yesterday with Sister Samina and with Dr. Ziba when she gave the example of growing up as the only Muslim girl in India as a child in school, and the kids teasing her, asking her, "Where is your God?" They mean, I don't know what they meant, but that was the experience. I don't want to speak for them because I don't know what they meant. But and she felt a sense of deprivation. We started having this very interesting, to me quite mind-boggling. But the other side of it is how many gods are we creating? All these idols that we are making. And it's interesting, Mujahida, that you mentioned even causes. When you mentioned causes, and I'm like, oh my God, are we making idols even of causes? So this begs a big question.
Maha, why even causes? Isn't everything tied to a cause? That's why we revere it, we love it, we feel that attachment to it.
Thank you for asking this, Dr. Yamina. Please turn on your camera. Thank you for asking this. I'll tell you why. I think because this addresses the level of murky waters where it can be dangerous. For me, causes seem to be a calling, that this is something that are their acts of worship. So then it will make me question, am I making idols of acts of worship?
Yeah.
Unless there is sophisticated vision and nuanced clarity there, the mind could be turning even acts of worship as idols.
That's another side topic, related but side topic, but something that we always reiterate, repeat, because it's repeated in the Quran in receiving nur, is that in order to read the ayat means in order to read the creation as messages from God, making God known to us, reflecting and making known his beautiful names to us, known to us, is to question and open up the illusory relationship between cause and effect and realize that they are connected through divine will, divine command, divine order. And if we don't do that, and when we don't do that, when we are living in ghafla, things do not appear as ayat, they do not appear as having any message for us. We wait for special occurrences, special events, and so when we are not doing that, what we are doing, we are misperceiving them as being horizontally related, as though the cause is producing the effect. If the cause produces the effect, it is a mini god, it is a mini Rab, it is an idol. Yesterday I shared an ayah that says the mushriks, those who commit shirk, they يلحدون في أسمائه. They first we are told the beautiful names, the qualities of goodness and perfection belong to God only and nothing else. However, those who commit shirk, those who live in mindlessness, they يلحدون في أسمائه. They distort his qualities, his names. It means they ascribe them to things themselves. I see something beautiful. I don't see it as being created beautifully, as mirroring and reflecting the beauty of its maker. I see it as beautiful itself. I say, this is mine, I love it, I want to have it. I say, it makes me happy. I want to have it in my home. I am making it into an idol without realizing. I can take it and put it in my home and reflect on it because it reminds me of its beautiful creator. And when it dies, when things die, they also are reminding us that that beauty, that knowledge, whatever those qualities that you were so much in love with, they do not belong to the thing itself. They belong to whoever created them that way. So it is cause effect is directly either leads us to reading the sign, knowing God with his beautiful name, Tawheed, Iman, Tawheed, or when we are not doing that, there is no neutral stance. When we are not actively committed, like the prophets, like Ibrahim alayhi salam, committed to know God, to follow the path of knowing God, we are in a state of ghafla, in a state of heedlessness, of mindlessness. We are distorting what we are seeing. We are seeing them with our false assumptions about them. We are ascribing those qualities that we see to the things themselves. I'm ascribing life to that myself. And when I pause and ask the question, as I'm taught in the Quran, I realize that it is not mine. Life is not mine, seeing is not mine, hearing is not mine, awareness is not mine, understanding is not mine, nothing is mine, everything is a gift unto me here and now. And so when we are in a shirk, in ghafla, we are perceiving in a shirky way, and everything becomes potential idol. Actually, they are all mini idol, but some of them we are not so much attached to them, so they don't really have a prominent idol role in our life. And this is related to the question that was asked also yesterday at the end. And so all these questions related to sacrifice, the question was, how is sacrifice related to worship of God? And truly, at first sight, it seems they are unrelated. However, if you go back to the first 3 days, we talked about the connection and the relationship. Sacrificing meaning breaking the idols. It's not, it seems like in the Arabic word is not sacrifice, it's just breaking, slaughtering. Sacrificing means I am giving up something. I'm not giving up anything. Nothing is mine anyway in the first place. So udhiya, dhaha, dhabaha, dhabih, they have nothing to do with, it's just breaking, slaughtering. So when I break the idol, I am breaking an imaginary idol. I made it up. There is no idol out there. And so I break it means I become aware. I have to do the la ilaha. This is not a God. This is not an idol.
So just a second, Dr. Yamina, you said we make those idols, they're not out there. And to clarify your earlier point is because since there is no neutral space, by not being mindful of the one creator of all, we get confused and lost in cause and effect. So we imagine
in plurality.
So this is where then it ties up to Dr. Mujahida's presentation that even we could make idols of things that appear on their own to be pretty benign and
everything
righteous.
becomes potential candidates, because we have not done the la ilaha. This is not God. This is not God. This is not God. And I talked about it yesterday. The process of la ilaha, this cannot be God. We start it in the outer world, but it has to end in the inner world. Otherwise, we won't reach Tawheed.
Okay, let us take a moment to read the chat. And I apologize if I'm not on top of the chats. and the questions. It's my fault. I apologize. Sister Sarah, do you want to go through, please?
Yes, inshallah. Okay, apologies for the background noise here, but so let's see. I think we will go to the last thing. So when Brother Faraz was mentioning his talk, Sister Amina wrote that sometimes we're asked to give up what we love, which relates to another question about sacrifice in order to experience a greater love. And then Faraz responded that we're asked to love in his name so that we actually don't have to give anything up. So then my question was about Amr. I had missed the point about this, the soul and the command. And then the soul was described, Faraz responded that the soul is described as Amr, which to me clarified that the feelings that we get, or the thoughts that we get when we were talking about like a feeling suddenly of not liking something is as per the command of the Amr. It's commanded to come into existence. So when we act upon it in a way that makes it consistent, we're free to do that, or we're free to go against it. That was for your question, Maha. So then Sister Esma wrote, can we say that Prophet Abraham's sacrifice is related to letting go of attachments to the world and even our most loved ones and our own paradigms? Also, can you elaborate on the verse that follows what was recited? Inna hada lahuwa bala'un mubin. If it's easy or there's no sacrifice from ourselves, then how come it is bala'un mubin? And maybe Dr. Yamina can comment on the bala'un mubin part, because I wasn't sure, but I think Dr. Yamina did just mention what the real sacrifice in adhiya is. And then Faraz mentioned the shift of perspective is not easy, and what is at stake is the mention of bala is very high. Okay, and then Sister Jalila beautifully put in a part about Sausan, in agreement with Sister Sausan's comment that isn't that what we're all seeking by joining the webinar, is those different notes, or seeking those scales is the best life. Sister Aliyat just put in some ayats, and then Brother Faraz wrote to Asma, there's no such thing as Abraham's sacrifice as far as I understand. And I believe that's it. Oh, and then Sister Alwiya just wrote, thanks Dr. Mujahida, extreme attention devotion is idolizing. What level, and now ask the question, what level of attention or devotion will not be considered as idolizing?
Dr. Mujahida, what level of attention? This is a very good question. Thank you, Professor Alwiya.
And this is something I believe personally I struggle with as the mother of 2 young children. It's something that...
Can you raise your voice, Mujahida, please?
Yeah, so I think this is something that I personally struggle with as the mother of 2 young children. This kind of deep, immense love that I have for my children. And it sometimes kind of terrifies me that I have this much love for them. And it almost also questions sort of how much I'm willing to let them get away with it. Now my children are young, and of course, none of us can argue that children don't deserve or need love, but going back to that, the literal meaning of idolatry is that extreme love, devotion, which is misplaced, and again dilutes the understanding of God's divinity and his attributes. So knowing that love that I have for my children is that because it comes from the source of the all-loving, if I am able to understand that in me, then that may not be a source of idolatry. But if I understand that love to be my own love, without it invoking the awareness of the divine or my maker or my sustainer, then that may be leaning more towards idolatry or worshiping of that love, if that makes sense.
Yes, actually, exactly. It's not a matter of quantitatively where do I stop loving more or less. It's not about quantity. It's about the quality. It means loving in the name of God or in my name. It means, am I aware when I am loving, I am at awe at the lover, the beloved, the lover, the loving one loving through me. And as I am loving, I realize that he is the loving and how loving he is. And so my loving becomes a knowing God, an act of worship, a standing in awe in front of, with ihsan in his presence. So it becomes, and this awareness needs to be nurtured. We need to work on it. The more we nurture it, the more it becomes our way of being in the world. So there is nothing, it's not a matter of, oh, we should let go of the love of this. Well, unless it's something inappropriate, but like your child, the love has already, I found it in me. You find it in your heart. We did not. So it's like with the indignation, I find the love in me. And when I pause and reflect, and I'm at awe at the loving one who fills my heart with love, I love him more, and I love my children more in the name of the loving one, Al-Wadud.
Dr. Yamina, can you please fix your camera and repeat that last phrase again, because again it's core. So that because it's one of the causes of anxiety. It causes anxiety when we're not clear about this very last phrase you mentioned. Can you
say when
something happens with your
anyway, because we were let's not deal with the camera now, otherwise I'll waste the time.
Okay.
Yamina's using both the phone and the camera, both together. So that's
yeah, because I'm speaking through my phone and the camera is in the computer and the computer is on the table. So I was saying that it's not a matter as we may think, we may imagine that, oh my God, if I love my child or someone too much, is it going to be too much and I'm making it into an idol? As though the matter is a matter of quantity. The matter is a matter of quality, of in whose name, with which awareness we love. And that's why we need to cultivate this awareness. And when we cultivate this awareness, the iman in our heart is going to increase, and that awareness will be transformed into living in the presence of God. So when I pause and reflect and I say, this love that in my heart, who is loving when I am loving? Just like who is breathing when I am breathing, the exercise we do? Who is loving when I'm loving? And when you stop and listen, it is not me. I find the love in me. And mothers know when the child is just born, it is amazing. And I remember like mothers sharing with each other in the hospital, like this creature just came. I don't know them. Like it's supposed to be an alien stranger. Yet, lo and behold, my first child was born in England, and there were all these ladies saying, "How come I have all this love and this interest, and I was afraid that I would not wake up at night but I wake up and I know it's my child who is crying. Where is this coming from? I heard people say this. They didn't go to God because they don't have that teaching. But if we keep doing this, we will find out that at least in the beginning, La ilaha, I am not the source of love. La ilaha means La waduda. There is no loving one, no source of love except God, except the all-loving one. And I find that love is coming through me. So now what you love becomes even more meaningful. And that love is an act of worship, an act of knowing God as the loving one, an act of the more I realize the love within me, the more I know that while I'm tasting the name of God, the loving, I am loving him, I am worshiping him, I'm getting close to him. And that's being at awe, worshiping, prostrating before God. I am loving in his name, not in my name. And that love is not becoming an idol. And the child or the object of love is not becoming an idol. The object of love, the child, is now a gift, a trust. And now the object of love is even more meaningful because it is a gift from the beloved one, the loving one. Everything becomes meaningful. Everything has a purpose.
If done exclusively with the awareness that
Yes.
the giver of the love, even for a baby or one's own children, is from God. So it's not a question of quantity, it's a question of maybe
quality.
Direction. You said quality, but may I add
direction? Yeah, and before I can realize that it's from God, I have to first find out that it's not from me. I find it in me, and this awareness, I have to become more and more familiar with this, because in our state of ghafla, when we don't ask question, I take it for granted that is, I am the loving as if I am the source. And that's the source of all our shirk problems, shirk pollution, making things into idols, getting away from Tawheed, not benefiting from the healing of Tawheed. All this starts from the heedlessness, the not pausing and become familiar with the reality that love is not mine. I find it in me. Someone is loving through me. That someone is the loving one. He's the source of love. He is my beloved sustainer, my God, my maker, Rabbul Alameen, the maker of everything, the sustainer of all things. This needs to be done on a daily level, so that reflecting تفكر ساعة خير من عبادة سنة. And another version is 60 سنة. So the Prophet ﷺ says, reflecting for 1 hour is better in the sense that it betters the worship of 1 year, because after 1 hour of reflection, the quality, the awareness of that, the deep depth of our worship deepens, become more true worship, because we become closer to the object of worship, to God. So we need to practice this awareness, this reflection on a daily level, so that we cultivate that awareness, so that it becomes our new way of being, our new way of perceiving things, our new way of interacting. So when I'm loving, I don't feel like I am loving. It will feel, whenever I see something that I love, I will be in a state of awe. I'll be like, what's going on here? Someone is loving through me. this is something that you can't explain. So it's not about understanding. Understanding is a very shallow first step. We have to go beyond that understanding into actually listening, actually tasting, actually observing the shahada, the shahada, the shahada.
Thank you, Dr. Yamina. With your permission, I will delay the question, the private question. There are several private questions, but I mean
about Bala al-Mubin, you can send it to me. We can maybe start with it tomorrow or after the speaker tomorrow.
Yes, we also have other questions. Dr. Sarah Al-Alam is going to go through them now, but I'm saying there was a question specifically addressed to you, Dr. Yamina Bugunaya, Professor Faraz, and to Dr. Mujahida about some sensitive issues that a person might feel and how to relate that to God. So let us delay this because it's a bit more sensitive and nuanced so that we can give it more time now that we're approaching our end of session. However, yes, Dr. Alia, you're next after Sarah goes through the chat, then Dr. Alia, then inshallah Labayk, and our closing dua from Dr. Yamina. Please go ahead, Sarah, and then Dr. Alia.
My I was just kicked out, so my chat got erased a bit. But the one question that was not yet addressed, besides the one that Dr. Yamina said she'll address tomorrow, was addressed to Faraz, I believe, about the paradigm shift, about how this relates to the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam and Hagar. I think this relates to just witnessing the what comes or the feelings that come as part of the command. I couldn't find any verses for us, but if you want to comment on that question, and Huda, if you want to just clarify the question, that would also work.
There is another related question. I'm going to read it. We know that patriarchy glorifies Abraham's sacrifice. I am curious to know how this new paradigm shift relates to his journey and the situation with Hajar. Hajar deserves attention. It might be related to the same question you're reading, Sarah. Are there, so can you, before we go to Dr. Alia, are we covered with the chat?
I think the only other thing is my chat got deleted when I got kicked out, but the other, if there's nothing that happened between Faraz is asking me for a verse and then the words ghafla, it's me, then I think there's just some comments, but no other questions.
Okay, I want to take responsibility for today's delayed response to your chat and to your private questions. And tomorrow I'm going to be on top of things better, and we'll try to figure out how to approach, how to address everybody's comments and questions on a more timely basis. Dr. Alia, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much, Dr. Mujahida. I really enjoyed your sharing. I really loved it. And I loved the ending part. And I know because time was so short, you sort of left it and I felt the burden and but then you wanted everyone to share, so it didn't go on it. So I wanted to just highlight what I felt like, what is in stake? Like, what about if we keep doing what we're doing? Could we bear the burden? And the burden that you beautifully brought to us from Surah Al-Zumar was like, that all of what working, whatever that cause could be. That cause could be like, you know, helping refugees settle. That cause could be like, you know, helping people, you know, get over poverty, you know, get out of jail. It could be a very beautiful cause. But can you imagine with all of this, like the things that, you know, the burden is, if I don't do it the right way, then all that work will become worthless. And then I will become amongst the losers. Like all the time that I'm investing with, like, you know, hoping that I'm among the, like, the beautifiers and muhsinin, I'm gonna become amongst the, so this is the burden, and the two burdens are unbearable. And then what everyone else said, like, you know, was almost like, you know, the remedy for this, like, you know, subtle, very like, you know, unclear. Yesterday we spoke about clear shirk. Today these subtle ones, the thing was like to look at them just like the way you look at in the psychology class when they first put like blots of dots and they don't have meaning, you see them as dots. But once you start looking for patterns, they say, oh, could you see a cat? Could you see, like, you know, even when we have these things that come on WhatsApp, could you see the face of an older woman? So when you're looking for something, you would see it. So can you imagine if we, like, and this is what Yamin is saying, if we train ourselves to look for those subtle things, then the, you know, the language that they use, the letter that they use for people with visual impairment, Braille, it's dots. Can you imagine if I spend my life just like, you know, copying these dots together and thinking I'm doing a great job, and I don't realize that these dots that I'm writing so carefully and beautifully have a meaning. And then it doesn't matter how beautiful I'm doing those dots, how beautiful I'm doing those causes, if I don't approach everything that has a meaning, then the ayah that you reminded is like a really heavy burden. Like all of the work that I'm doing in beautifying the way I'm copying these dots and putting them together and delivering my service to the people that I think, and it's all about them and me, you know, all of that is going to waste. And I thinking that I'm gonna like be saved with this, or this is like makes me like, you know, from al-muhsinin, then I'm gonna be also amongst the losers, because I did not look for meaning. Like I did not try to look for meaning. The more I look for meaning, I'll find it. So I cannot thank you, Dr. Mujahida, enough. And thank you very much for bringing this up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Alia. And thank you, Dr. Mujahida, for your valuable presentation. Please go ahead and take time to answer questions if you like, or make comments. Dr. Mujahida?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Alia. And you know, it is something that it can be quite transformative and essentially can shift your perspective. And I believe once you start becoming aware, it's kind of like that ripple effect that Dr. Sosin was mentioning. And not just the ayah mentioning that it will nullify all the good deeds that you have done and all your hard work, but also to me, it violates the, you know, it violates the understanding of God's divinity and God's truly understanding God, his attributes, and diluting it and violating that divinity. So when you start devoting or giving severe love or extreme love or attention or etc., without consciously being aware of Allah's attributes or God, then that is in violation of God himself. And so that can be very, very subtle, and it can be very, you know, the very, very devastating. But in the essence, we're violating the whole understanding of God and his divinity by participating in acts of idolatry, even subtle idolatry.
Which deprives us, Dr. Mujahida. Yesterday, Dr. Yamina Bugnaya explained that how this deprives us. It deprives us, actually, of something essential. So we might be even violating ourselves more than we are. By violating God's divinity, we're really violating ourselves.
Yep.
Dr. Yamina, is this a fair way to put it?
Yeah, it's a way of putting it, because we are actually lying about God, and we think we are stealing, but we can't steal. We are just lying about it. I think that I'm saying, oh, you know, this life is mine. I can say it as much as I want. The fact that it is in God's hand doesn't change. So I'm not harming God truly, but as far as I'm concerned, if I'm saying it's mine, and deep down I know that I have no control over it, and I have this deep longing and need for eternal, lasting life, and I can't do anything about it, I'm actually severing, cutting my my connection to the source of all I need, just to how do you say, to lie and brag about it.
Okay, do we have time? The Sister Hoda is raising a very important topic, question about how we perceive Hagar, peace be upon her, in this journey of Ibrahim, peace be upon him. Do we have, and a lot of it, I mean, Dr. Faraz Sheikh, can you join us tomorrow? I'm wondering if we should start with this tomorrow, because it's been the mention of Hagar, and some people pronounce her name Hajar, has been critically ignored. Sorry, I lost the...
My intention was to speak about Hagar Maha. So
Okay.
she's not ignored. She's one on your speakers list.
Oh, so you're gonna address this topic?
At least from my point of view.
Okay.
So just let's leave it to Alia, inshallah.
So are we good, Sister Hoda, to broach this topic again tomorrow so that we can give it its due attention?
Yeah, thank you. I'm fine with that. I just want to look beyond the symbolic, like Sausan had pointed out, that she is commemorated in Hajj and so on. I want to look beyond that symbolic commemoration of her, because I think it has taken on a passive attitude. She deserves attention, and her experience with Abraham and Abraham's command, Allah's command to take her to an unknown land. I see now that Professor Faraz had brought in a really great paradigm shift, an exciting a new way of looking at it. I'm beginning to feel excited. I see some similarity, like an overlap between her experience of that situation with the command that Prophet Abraham received to put her in an unknown land versus the command or the dream. So I see a parallel over those two in it. I'm finding it really exciting to talk about it if it's possible. Thank you.
I'm glad, because Hagar is my favorite part of the story.
We look forward to hearing you, Dr. Alia, and thank you, Sister Hoda, for bringing this important question. I know it's beyond 3 in the morning where Dr. Faraz Sheikh is, so we might discuss this again tomorrow and later on Tuesday during Dr. Alia's presentation. So hopefully we'll have enough time and attention. As usual, there are such important topics and questions and critical issues to ponder on. But those of you who are fasting on the East Coast, some of us are in California, some of us are in the Midwest, some of us in the West, some of us across the Atlantic, I want to welcome everyone And we are going to end the session so that people can attend to breaking fast. I hope your fasting is blessed, your dua is accepted, and I hope these days are full of rewarding remembrances to our hearts. If Dr. Yamina, we're going to end with dua from Dr. Yamina, and then meet everyone again tomorrow, inshallah, for new presentations. We have two new presentations tomorrow. I'm gonna get to the chat. I won't leave Zoom. I will read the rest of the questions, don't worry, and the chat, but just a moment with Labayk, hoping that we can answer and be present and mindful in answering the call to God.
لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك.
Dr. Yamina, could you kindly close us off with a dua?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وتب علينا يا تواب يا حكيم توبة نصوحا لنكون من الذين إذا فعلوا فاحشة أو ظلموا أنفسهم ذكروا الله فاستغفروا لذنوبهم ومن يغفر الله الذنوب إلا الله. نستغفر الله العظيم الكريم الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ونتوب إليه سبحانه. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم بحق القرآن وبحق من أنزل عليه القرآن نور قلوبنا بنور القرآن واجعل القرآن شفاء لنا من كل داء ومونسا لنا في حياتنا وبعد مماتنا واجعله لنا في الدنيا قرينا وفي القبر مونسا وفي القيامة شفيعا وعلى الصراط نورا ومن النار سترا وحجابا وإلى الجنة رفيقا وإلى الخيرات كلها دليلا وإماما بفضلك وجودك وكرمك وإحسانك ورحمتك يا أكرم الأكرمين ويا أرحم الراحمين. وصل وسلم على من أنزلت عليه القرآن وأرسلته رحمة للعالمين وعلى آله وصحبه صلاة ترضيك وترضيه وترضى بها عنا يا رب العالمين يا أرحم الراحمين آمين. والحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وارنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه آمين. والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Thank you. Thank you. Inshallah, may Allah accept everyone's prayer and please pray for each other. And thank you again.
Ameen, ya Rabbi. Please turn on your, unmute yourselves, turn on your microphones and say salams, and we're gonna listen to Labayk as we leave. But please say salams.
Salam alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Allah khair.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu
alaikum. Assalamu alaikum.
عليكم السلام.
لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن